Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Sam for a very special discussion, a special video, something incredibly new. The first episodes in what is going to be a new series, feeling very festive, aren't we indeed? There's a Cinema Savvy Christmas hat. We're talking the Muppet Christmas Carol. There's snow in the background. Even I've got a Christmas jumper on, which doesn't happen often. So we're getting Scrooge into the spirit. And Sam has come up with an ingenious idea for a series, and I have to give Sam the entirety of the credit in the opening minute for this straight away because it's a great idea. And this is I guess we're going to call it Cinema Savvy's Christmas Classic Series. These are neither review nor are they discussions. There's something in between that we haven't put a word on it. We might one day, who knows? But at this point in time, it's going to be a very chilled chat about certain films at Christmas, whether they're classics, whether they're alternate Christmas films is sometimes a term, whether they're childhood favorites for us growing up. We're going to be doing a couple of these videos in the lead up to Christmas Day, obviously, not the New Year. I almost said the wrong thing there. But before we talk a little bit more about the series and the ideas, Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, and thank you very much. We talk about a lot of random stuff, and a lot of it's just memes and Star Wars, basically. But I asked George the other day, I was like, why is there nothing that's Christmas? And he was like, I don't actually know. And then it was like, maybe like we can just pull something together. And it was like, yeah, let's do that. And then it was just like one of those obvious, oh yeah. So it's great that Cinema Savvy is able to kind of do this. I think it's such a fun thing that can be done. I know so many people are really getting into the festive spirit already. I say already, it's 2.5 weeks until Christmas, is it? No, it's 2 weeks today. Well, 2 weeks today as of recording until Christmas Day. So we really are on the way. And what better way to start this series this month than doing Muppet Christmas Carol, which is an absolute classic of a Christmas film.
Yeah, and this is kind of where we're going with it. That, I mean, if anyone really wants the context, we'd recorded the Doctor Who spoiler discussion for the giggle. You can check that out in full, not to plug that, but we were just having a catch up as we do after. Aaron was on as well. Tate's obviously in Austria, and then it just, as you said, it just came. Well, why don't you do anything at Christmas? And I am a bit of a humbug, which might lead us to why we're talking about this one today. But at the same time, I'd never really, and I've thought this maybe as a mean take. We've had the odd chat. There's always been talk of a Christmas top 10 video. But the logistics of organising those are very tricky, and we just did the Disney one, so I don't know if we could get away with 2 in a month. But with respect to cinema, let alone TV, Christmas is an integral part of that calendar. That you grow up with Christmas films. As you get older, your taste develops. You watch different Christmas films, maybe watch older ones, maybe go back to childhood classics. But it's a massive part of the film calendar. I'd argue that they don't. I don't want to sound like an old man saying they don't make many today. They still make them, but I feel like it's so rare to have a modern Christmas classic. We're not doing that as a series. We're not on the hunt for Christmas classics or stuff like that. We are literally picking Christmas films to talk about every couple of days. And because we can only do this in December, and we know it's the 13th the time this video comes up, we are obviously pre-recording. As we said, we recorded Doctor on Saturday. We had a 2-day turnaround. A good idea is developed, and here we are, and we hope people at home like it. And with the people watching at home, don't just comment your thoughts on the Muppet Christmas Carol. I want to hear your favourite Christmas films. I want to know what you'd like to see from us. We know what we're doing 4 this year, but this is something where people enjoy it. We can bring it back every December. We stuck to 2 videos a week. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of Christmas classics. It's not anything that we need to do too much of or too little of, but we can certainly plan around it. And as I said, we have picked 4. And the way the series is going to go, I mentioned it's not like a review. It's not like a deep discussion. It's not a retrospective. There might be similar things you've heard us talk about with other films, but we're not doing here's the whole behind the scenes. Here's the cast list. Here's the box office. Here's the Oscars. We're not doing that. This is literally a chilled out chat. And this is kind of where the title comes from, because it's not a review. It's not a discussion, but we're doing something in those regions. And Sam, without putting you on the spot too much, I mean, obviously, we're going to have you on not just the first episode. We want to try and get on for most of them. It's your series as far as I'm concerned. One of the things we love doing on retrospectives, which is something we are nabbing, but this was your idea. Normally I'd say, what's the first Christmas film you remember watching? You had a much better one. and it stems into two. What's your favorite Christmas film as a kid, and your favorite Christmas film as an adult? That's what I'm very curious about, and that's what the question's going to be for anyone that does jump on in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I would say with that question, it's a really interesting thing because when you were a kid and when it's Christmas time, they'll show films on TV, or at least back then. I know they still do now, but they would show obviously the main Christmas films, but they'd also show things like musicals and kind of classic Hollywood films at the time. So you kind of have a vibe that certain films are Christmas films when they actually aren't, but it was just the Christmas period is the time to show those films. So I've got two for both. My favorite film as a kid and a favorite as an adult. So I would say as a kid, the actual Christmas film that I probably did enjoy the most was The Grinch. I remember the build up to it coming out. I remember it was like being advertised on like kids' TV shows, and when it came out, I enjoyed it so much. And I think it is a Christmas classic at this point. It's over 20 years old. And as someone who had never seen the animated version or anything like that, the Grinch with Jim Carrey is kind of the defining version of that character. So I love that. But then also the other film that I've got, which is a musical, and one of my favorite films of all time, is Singing in the Rain, which I remember would be on TV quite a lot as a kid as well. And I know it still gets put on at Christmas time occasionally to this day. I absolutely love that film. It is in like my top 10 films of all time. And I get such joy from that. And I think that's what I personally want from a Christmas film, is to kind of get, well, at least to end on a very high point. So those are my favorites as a kid. As an adult, it's shifted, definitely. So, and it's actually two films that are not even proper Christmas films that I would put them under that banner. One of them is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, James Bond film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. Again, it's set at Christmas. At least a good chunk of it is set at Christmas time, and it's in Switzerland. I've talked extensively about that film. I don't know how much I've talked about it on Cinema Savvy, but it's definitely one of my favorite Bond films. It is my favorite Bond film. And yeah, I would definitely check that out if you're interested. And then the other one is Hook, which I would put in a very similar vibe as Muppet Christmas Carol for me in terms of nostalgia. They came out within a year of each other. We've covered Hook on Cinema Savvy during the Spielberg retrospective. And I was happy to be on that as well to talk about my love for it. And and part of that is set at Christmas as well, to be fair, in Hook. And again, it's the fantasy element. It's, Peter Pan, that story. Robin Williams is amazing in it. I love those films, but there's so many to choose from, and that's why it's difficult when it's not just purely Christmas films that are shown at this time. It's all these other ones as well, and it just kind of blurs the lines, I think. But yeah, and I know we're going to talk about some other fantastic films in this series as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought them up as well, because I like the fact that not every Christmas film is necessarily an outright, this is made to be like the Christmas film for this year or something like that. And certainly I think it happens more now, where I don't know if alternate Christmas films the term, but people do these discussions like, hey, there's some films here that are set at Christmas. Shane Black does that a lot for some reason, but he does. And I like those kinds of films. Okay, I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I'm not going to talk about it later, but that's one that could pop up in another year. Who knows? But we're going to be doing 4 of these. So I should have said this. There's going to be a video every Wednesday and Sunday. Obviously, Sunday is going to be Christmas Eve as well. So we will have 4 videos up for this year. And as I do mention, any feedback people want to give us is great. When we do new series, we like to open the floor up. We might tinker with a couple of things behind the scenes. That's very normal for us. And again, with this being a Christmas thing, it's a little bit different. It's not as serious as some other things. But I'm following your lead with them. Favorite Christmas film as a kid. Now, I forgot about The Grinch until you said it. It's probably the Christmas film of our childhood. My dad's birthday is the 22nd of December. And we watched it on, I don't know if it was release day, but whatever year they came out, was it 2001 or 2000s? We went to the cinema to watch it.
I feel like it was maybe 2001. I am going to check that because that will annoy me. Because
It was around
I
that
have a good
time.
enough memory of it. So, it was 2000. Shock. Okay, I
Okay.
thought it was
So I was
2001.
four. I was 4.5, and that's, I think it's my sister's favorite Christmas film by a country mile. But The Grinch is something that echoes of my childhood. But I'd be lying. My favorite Christmas film as a kid's Jingle All the Way.
Excellent.
I could give my reasons why. Maybe I'll give my reasons why in a few weeks. Maybe I'll give my reasons why in a few years. But listen, Jake Lloyd is on that poster there. Anakin Skywalker in a Christmas film. I was sold. I loved it. Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Christmas film. I knew who Arnold Schwarzenegger was because I loved Batman and Robin at that age. Great.
Didn't we all love Batman and
Yeah.
Robin at that age?
And I still do, and I think you do as well. Like, it's a great film. People,
Yeah.
maybe not a great film, but it's got great memories and it's entertaining, and it's more entertaining than half the DC films that come out these days. But without getting into DC comic talk, yeah, Jingle the Way is up there, and I said second. And a shout out to the Snowman. It's 25 minutes long, but it's still one of the elite ones. Forever ruined by Christopher Walken's Walken in the Air edition. But favorite Christmas film as an adult. Sorry to be that guy. It's Die Hard. Simple, really. Someone's going to comment, "Oh, Die Hard's not a Christmas film." Well, it is, and get over it. It's the greatest. It's the greatest not Disney film. Technically, it's on Disney Plus. And I'll say this: like, my parents were trying to pick a film to watch on streaming for like Christmas. I was like, Disney's got like all of them. And then Disney literally has Nightmare Before Christmas, Die Hard, Home Alone, Muppet Christmas Carol, which we're talking about today, and loads of others, because they've obviously got Fox. They've absorbed so many of the great Christmas films. But that's going to kind of segue us talking, and we are going to talk about the Muppet Christmas Carol. But it's the intro episode. We want to go over what the show's about, what our backgrounds are, and we're going to switch things up for the first time. We're dropping IMDb plot synopses moving forward. We always plug our own Letterboxd. I'm like, why don't we just use the Letterboxd synopsis instead? Makes sense. Follow us on Letterboxd at cinema_savvy. Same thing on Twitter, I think Instagram, all of the social medias, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. But the Letterboxd synopsis, it is a bit of a mouthful. And for those that aren't familiar with either A Christmas Carol or The Muppet Christmas Carol, this is a retelling of the classic Dickens tale of Ebenezer Scrooge, miser extraordinaire. He's held accountable for his dastardly ways during nighttime visitations by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. That's a mouthful. A lot going on in that synopsis. We don't even need to dive into a synopsis, but just in case you didn't know, the story of A Christmas Carol, probably the most well-known Christmas story there is, I would argue.
Yeah, definitely one of the most long-standing stories. Anyway, I mean, it's stood the test of time. It's been retold in so many variations. Personally, I think this is the best one. Or at least it's the only one I've actually been able to, watch fully several times. And I think a lot of people, especially people our age, would probably agree with that.
Here's something trippy. Sorry to be really rude. Look at my phone. So 20 years ago today, we moved into this house we live in now. Now, the reason I'm telling you this on this, because I went to primary school, and I don't know if you had the same. Sometimes in December, you'd go on school trips to the theatre or for pantomime, or they'd wheel out the VHS. We went to a theatre to watch A Christmas Carol, and I came home to a new house that we've now been in for 20 years. 20 years to the day we are recording this, we've moved in. That's why the moment I just let everyone know it's Christmas Carol, I just had this light bulb moment. I was like, wait, is it the 11th or the 13th of December we moved? So
I'm actually the ghost of Christmas
coincidence.
past. I'm bringing you back to 20 years ago to just remember all this.
Life was so much simpler. I was 7 years old. All I wanted at Christmas was Star Wars Lego. And then I found out Santa wasn't real this Christmas too, because all the presents from my parents were on Christmas Eve. And I was buzzing because there was a Lego Super Battle Droid. And I did not care that Santa wasn't real. I respect my parents more. And that's what everyone should when they realise that. Okay, sorry, that's really divulged. But it's about Christmas Carol, I guess. Sam, I'm going to jump to you.
Yes.
Like we do with a lot of these discussions, everyone's got their attachments with Christmas, the time of year, their memories and whatnot. Now, I watched Muppet Christmas Carol for the first time, but it was almost your suggestion, and we'll go into a bit why we picked this shortly. But I want to hear from you, maybe your memories of this film growing up, if you can remember much of that, the impact of it, alongside not making us up on the spot. Do you have a Christmas tradition? Like, do you watch this? I'm curious about what people do with their sort of Christmas calendars.
Yeah, it's weird actually, because there's certain memories that are very vivid and that just stand out. And I just have this clear memory of watching this film in my sister's bedroom on her TV because she had a VCR, she had a VHS player in her bedroom. So my dad, as great a guy as he was someone who would film on a camcorder and would record films off the TV and TV off the TV for us. So, when we were kids, we were very lucky to watch, episodes of The Simpsons that they weren't bringing out on video at the time, or any of these other films that were either difficult to get or that we just couldn't afford at the time. As you do. So Muppet Christmas Carol was one of those films that he recorded off the TV, and I don't know if it was, on Channel 4, I think, but I just really remember these Dorito adverts that were, I think there was the late night films or whatever were sponsored by Doritos or something, and I've not seen that recording for 2 decades, but that's so clear in my mind, the links into and out of the film. I don't know if that was still when like the crocodiles doing the Budweiser adverts, not the crocodiles, the toads, the frogs, whatever, when they go Budweiser, that you're too young for that. But anyway, I feel like that was on at that times too, and so I remember would watch that probably every Christmas. I don't think there was a strict kind of tradition that we would have. But it was definitely something that was thrown on, and then by the time we kind of moved to DVDs, that was kind of just played less. So we've never actually owned it, but of course, streaming allows us to watch it more. So I have really fond memories of this. I guess my thing with this film is that it was definitely more my sister's favorite than mine, because they did scare me, because I was quite young when I first saw it. So there's certain sections, the Marleys, the Ghost of Christmas Future, some of the themes, the headstone, that it really creeped me out. So Muppet Treasure Island was definitely more my Muppet film that I loved more when I was growing up. But I definitely think this is the better produced film, and the one that definitely gives you more. Gives you more from it, and I think that stems from coming from A Christmas Carol, which of course is one of the greatest stories that has been put to page. So yeah, I've got really fond memories of this, and it's great to come back to it and have a new a new perspective on it, and I definitely feel a lot more emotional nowadays watching it.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and I think this is like a generational thing, isn't it? Where I don't know if they'll be watching, but today's kids will never know having recordings, missing scenes because it was recorded after, having those same adverts because you've got it recorded. That's your copy of that film, and then one day you might have it on DVD, you might have it on Blu-ray, you might now have it on a streaming service, which people aren't going to ever have that, and that's a massive part of like memories. I mean, for us, it was VHS with all our Christmas films. The VHS tapes would come out alongside all the Christmas decorations. Things like the snowman would have, is animated. It was literally called Santa Claus, I think. We'd have loads of them, and we only got DVDs in like 2007, 8. Like I was at school when mom and dad basically went wild and shop and bought tons of Christmas DVDs, and I was like, oh my god, all these are now on DVD. Didn't really watch them much at that age anyway, but it was cool to have them all. And this is kind of really interesting for me that obviously the first video we're doing for this is a film I've not seen. So I've already ticked one off for the list for a new Christmas film. 2, if we're counting The Nightmare Before Christmas. To me, that's not a Christmas film. I don't know if that's a debate. I don't know if that's the thing, but I watched that feeling more like Halloween than Christmas, if I'm honest. I know it's the middle between the two of them. But this was weird watching this on Disney+. And I'll tell you why. Michael Caine is one of my favorite actors, and I've said that for as long as I can remember. Probably when I was first at school, I went to the boring Dark Knight story, but that's the first proper thing I saw Michael Caine in. And then off that, I remember like reading his autobiography when I was in like year 10, 11, and I've just always loved him as an actor. And this is one of the big ones I've never seen. And I don't know why, because I didn't watch the Muppets growing up, but I didn't dislike the Muppets. I just didn't know. I didn't know what they were, but I don't think they were on TV in England, or if they were, it wasn't a thing. I know the Muppets is much bigger in America than here in the UK. I know that Disney ended up acquiring it all, and that as a fact, this is the first Disney production for the Muppets. They didn't acquire them till it's a bit like Pixar. Disney worked with Pixar to make the films before they bought them, and they did this with the Muppet Christmas Carol. But I've still not seen Muppet Treasure Island. The only Muppets film I've seen is the one from about 10, 15 years ago. I don't know if it was like literally like a film called The Muppets.
Yeah, and it had like
Um,
Jason Segel and
That's the one. Yeah, I forgot the
what's
villain. He was meant to be playing. He was in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Forgot his name, but yeah, it was that one. It was what's her name in it? No, I've forgotten already. Anyway,
no,
so
I know
that's
it's on the tip of my tongue. Like I know who it is.
but like and it's interesting that like and
It was 2011 and
2011. I was in
yeah,
year 10 when that came out.
Amy Adams.
Amy Adams, that's it. And I remember watching it, and I thought it's nice, but I think my mum enjoyed it a bit more. And I don't think she grew up with the Muppets, but I think she might have a better memory with them or seen them more than I had when I was younger. And I just never saw this. I don't watch many Christmas films, so I've never gone back and ticked off some of the mega ones, which is kind of a nice thing about this is that I've got the option to do it. Again, we're not overdoing this as a series. It's not a video every day for 12 days of Christmas. That'd be too much. That would be far too much for me. But at the same time, it opens new doors and at least gets me in somewhat of a mood. You're not going to get any Christmas decorations in this room, but
yeah,
I'll say it was weird because I watched it on Disney Plus, and I don't feel rude. Like I'm not going to hype up physical media for this sort of thing, but because I've always been so used to Christmas films being put on as DVD, being put on as Blu-ray, being put on as a VHS, it felt so weird to go on a streaming service and like have a whole wealth of options, have catalogs on there. And that's the first time it felt somewhat weirder for me. And that's why my logic came of like kids today are just going to pick out of a gazillion choices. A lot of awful Disney original ones on there too. Santa Paws, there was a lot of those being advertised. Yeah. The dreadful Home Alone remake from last year, which is one of the biggest crimes in modern cinema. But watching this, I will say I enjoyed it. As my initial thoughts go, listen, I love Michael Caine. And one thing I'm kind of trying to take away from it is, the Twitter discussion that pops up once in a while. What film would you love to see where it's the whole cast of the Muppets and one person?
Yeah.
Now, someone can clearly point me wrong, but my limited understanding of the Muppets is, if it wasn't for this, the Muppet Christmas Carol, that wouldn't be a thing, because it is testament to this film, to the direction, to the Henson Company, to Michael Caine, that it worked. And in theory, it shouldn't work, but it did. And if it didn't, this would never have happened again. Now, I've not seen the Muppet Treasure Island. I don't know if that came out after or before this, but I'd imagine it's very similar. There's maybe one or two names in there, with the rest of it being Muppets. And I kind of quite like that as a setup. I've been involved with the joke before. There's plenty of great choices that people always do. But I didn't expect this film to be as good as it was. I honestly say this, not lying. I thought this would be one of those films where, when you got a favorite as a kid and you watch it again when you're older and you're like, oh no. I've really enjoyed it as an adult. And I think there'll be many adults that do. And yeah, my initial thoughts before we really get into some of the other stuff we want to talk about is the fact that I had a fun time with it. And it's sometimes there's retelling. Like I was never massive on Charles Dickens at school. The books were massive. The stories everybody already knew. A bit like a Shakespeare type thing. You sort of had to study it, which made you like it less. So I was like, oh, and not another Christmas Carol. But I had a fun time with it. And this is where these videos are going to get different, because we're not doing a review, so I need to get out of my system. But where we're going to sort of segue into, we spoke about memories, we spoke about a few other things. The question we put on the schedule is, why did we pick this film? Now, I could be really sly and say because it's the first film of the series, and we want to go for some bigger ones, which is partially correct. But Sam, I'm going to sort of head over to you. I think, and it was only 2 days ago, this was one of your suggestions to begin with.
Yeah, I had suggested this film, one, because I saw it quite recently, just because I wanted something to put on, and I think I watched it last week or the week before when I wasn't feeling too well. And two, I think the main reason is that this is one of those films that I very rarely hear anything, if anything, negative about. George, you're right. I feel like this film had a lot of pressure on it because it was the first production after Jim Henson. So it really kind of set a standard of what I would say a modern day Muppets could be. I've not seen any of the previous films, unfortunately, so I can't say what that was like. But obviously, they were very popular with their show, and I think they do have there's a great sense of comedy. Of course, it's the main aspects of the Muppets, but mixing that with live action, I think, works wonders. And I think this film is just something that everyone enjoys and everyone loves. I have great fondness for this film, as I've mentioned, and I think everyone just talks highly of it. So to me, it seemed quite an obvious choice, and because it's in the early '90s, it's kind of that really nice era where it's not, a classic in the sense that it's quite old. It's not, as it's not the oldest film that's going to be popping up in this series anyway. But now it's over 30 years old. It's not a modern film either. So I think it really hits that sweet spot, and I think films from that era as well are always great comfort films to me anyway. And there's a lot of fantastic filmmaking that's happening, like on the cusp of CGI really taking off. I feel like you see all these film productions that have these gorgeous sets, and everyone just seems to know what they're doing in these films before it kind of everyone's like, oh right, we need to really push forward into this new era. So as from a film production perspective, I think it's a wonderful one to watch. And because it's utilizing puppets, to see their interactions in a world and how that's done with live action, Michael Caine's the lead character, but, there's a bunch of other, human characters in this film alongside the Muppets. And I think visually that's a really wonderful thing to see, is how they've done that. And I think a lot of people will presume how that's done and will be correct about it. But to just see how it's done and how it's integrated so well is one of my joys of this film. And Muppet Treasure Island, which did come out after this, does follow a similar thing. So yeah, it was definitely, that was the reason why I chose this film, and because I knew George had said that he hadn't seen it, and I know he loves Michael Caine, so it just seemed like the right obvious choice. And then it just seemed like the obvious choice again to be the first film to really start on a strong note. But I think it's going to be quite a strong note throughout the entirety of this month.
Yeah, and I'm glad you have, if I'm honest, because we could have done one of the big heavyweights. There could have been, I mean, listen, there's so many great films people could have picked, but like, you could have easily done The Grinch and then this and that and that and that and that. But I think you're right. The Muppets is that right balance of what I enjoy, what you've enjoyed, your history, my history, and where this like idea for the series has come from. If I'm honest, like I said this to you on Saturday, like I'm not going to nab credit. It's not something we do, but we've never really had someone outside the main sort of two to put forward a serious idea. And here we are 2 days later recording it. And that's the one thing I very much enjoy. I know you've been on a lot of our videos this year too, but it's like, I wouldn't have come up with a series like this because it just isn't in my invention to do something like this. Yet you have, and we've took it, we've run with it. And I think for the first one, it's got to be different. You don't want to go in too strong. You don't want like, I don't know, the greatest film ever made to be the first one. Like if you were going, let's go back to some classic films, let's do Citizen Kane, you'd be like, what? And that would just be for like a best of all time film series, not Christmas, obviously. And that's kind of where we're doing it with this, that we have picked 4 films between us. We've scheduled them in. At the end of this video, we'll say what the next one's going to be. It's not a big surprise what we're doing, but we don't also spoil the fun if people are curious or people want to see certain films. We do have the 4 locked in we're going to do this year, and kind of sticking with talking about, not just picking this film, but this one too. Something we want to do is talk about, and this is going to be maybe slightly harder given how well-known Christmas Carol is, but something you spoke about is one thing we want to discuss in these episodes is, the themes of the film. Now, obviously, Christmas Carol, it's a very well-known story, and the Muppets' take on Christmas Carol is self-explanatory without that sounding like a detriment. But obviously, the original, well, the source material, God, could you imagine this in today's world? Oh my God, they've not adapted it page by page by page. They've added in songs. How dare they? Let's talk some music, because I'm not big on musicals. I just don't have knowledge of musicals. That's why I'm not big on them. But I was caught off guard that I don't know if I should have known this was going to be musical, but it kind of made the film great for it. Now, we reviewed Wonka last week, so I've kind of had a sort of Christmas-ish musical recently. But it's the Muppets singing songs, and I know the Muppets do that, but having this combination of adapting a classic book, having, you mentioned the sets, the production on it gorgeous, and the credit, and this is what people will forget, to have these puppets on sets whilst you're having actors as well, like not like kid actors, not they're hiding behind, well, maybe they are hiding behind a wall, but Michael Caine is interacting on the set with where these puppeteers are. And for that to take place is an incredible thing. And I know that puppeteering, I don't want to call it a lost art. It is something that, as you mentioned with CGI, a lot of it's been replaced when maybe it shouldn't have, maybe it didn't need to. And certainly in the last 10 years, there's been a great return on maybe bigger productions of practical puppets for big things. Star Wars jumps to mind as an obvious one. And it is something I think people enjoy, and you can always spot the difference. You can tell they're on a set. You can tell that it's been built differently and whatnot. And that's so much better for it. But I want to kind of get your thoughts on the songs of this. I'm not going to lie, I can't sit there and quote them. I've seen the film once. I've seen two films since. Very different films since, which is going to make it harder to come up with them. But I want to get your thoughts on maybe the music for this, and also where you're sort of going with the themes. Again, this is the first time I've done this, so sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm curious because you are leading this video, not me, and I'm more than happy to say that too.
Oh no, thank you. I think the score of this film, I think, is just beautiful, and I think any family Christmas film, there's always got to be an iconic either theme or soundtrack. There's got to be something that stands out. And what's great about this film is that there's so many songs that will randomly pop into your head, especially after you've seen it recently. So, I mean, for this film, it was composed by Miles Goodman and written, and with songs written by Paul Williams. And I ended up trying to figure out what songs were like the best ones, but I ended up writing maybe 6 or 7 songs because so many, Scrooge, One More Sleep Till Christmas, Marley and Marley, When Love Is Gone, It Feels Like Christmas, Thankful Heart, and When Love Is Found. Every song, despite what it's trying to do, Scrooge is definitely the introduction to Scrooge, and it's talking about describing who Scrooge is, and it's quite dull and heavy. Yet there's still a joy to it because you have all these people, all these Muppets singing this song together. I got to the end of the film, and when Love Is Found was being performed, I almost cried because it just, for whatever reason, now as an adult, it really gets to me. And I think what the songs do really nicely is fit with the story, and that's really what the best soundtracks should do. The fact that these are original songs that are written for it really highlights Scrooge's story nicely. It goes through everything that he does. There's a lot of positivity, which of course should be had, and I just think it's probably one of the strongest elements of this. There's a lot of strong elements of this film, and if you look on something like Letterboxd, you'll see that a lot of people rate this film 4 or 5 stars mostly, out of any other ratings. And I think that just goes to show how strong the film is, not just in its composition of the score, but in everything: its casting, its production style, and just making a family film out of this story, which as we've mentioned, is kind of heavy and is not maybe the most entertaining thing for people in this era. At least some people in this era. I know some people probably love the original book by Charles Dickens. But yeah, I just think it's something that if you hear these songs, you'll definitely be going back to them. If you've not seen this film, I don't know how you've not seen it any this far into this video. But if you've not, I would absolutely go back, watch the film. You will be singing these songs outside of it. It's wonderful. It's heartwarming. And I'm hoping, I need to check now actually if it's on Spotify or not, because I want to listen to them. The more I talk about them, the more I want to listen.
It's really interesting that I'm glad you put the Scrooge up. I mean, not we're going to divert this into a chat about Michael Caine, but we have to talk about Michael Caine in this film. And I'm going to say that there's a few names of actors that were thrown around. Again, this series, we're not doing necessarily all behind the scenes, but we want to talk about a couple of things. I think with Michael Caine, you've got one of the most iconic British actors in history. and to play the role of Scrooge, and listen, Scrooge has been done in theatre so many times. There's been so many ample of TV dramas done on this, films of the past. You know, it is, as we said, one of those iconic story, not an iconic story, but its place in literature is there for a reason, and there is a reason why people always go back to it. Again, whether it's on stage or on the screen, it doesn't really matter. It is something that, no doubt, like Shakespeare, actors want to do. Actors want to do Dickens stuff. They want to they want to perform in A Christmas Carol. They want to perform in Oliver or stuff like that. Michael Caine being cast is not just important for this, but his approach to this, and I think he said it in the past with talking about this, is that he was black and white on, I am taking this so seriously. I'm not laughing around with the Muppets. I'm going to treat these like they are cast members, and I'm going to have this Scrooge performance as it should. And I know that's such a basic thing to say, but it is so imperative that he had that approach, because if he isn't taking it seriously on screen, and I'm not going to point names and single out other actors who would maybe do something ridiculous with it, but I can think of so many actors who you could tell they'd be like homing it in, they'd be having a laugh, you could see it in their performance. But Michael Caine does such a phenomenal job at carrying this film. As I know there's a couple of other human actors in it too, but it really does work. And I know that's the character of Scrooge, that, you know, you're following him on his journey, but Michael Caine is so good at playing the bigoted type, that, you know, humbug. He says that how many times to start. I think he says he spoke about Wall Street and basically like financial people as to what his inspiration came from, which is a bit ironic given some statements in the last 10 years. But I loved him in this. And listen, it's a film I get to see from one of my favorite British actors who has announced his retirement this year, plugging The Great Escaper again, which I absolutely loved from a couple of months ago. What are your thoughts on him in this? Because if you look at Michael Caine's filmography, maybe this diverts from Christmas, which is my intention. I think of like Children of Men, and it's a very comedic performance in such a serious film. I love that he's doing such a serious performance in an almost comedic Christmas film, because it then creates a legacy. And no doubt, you look back at Michael Caine's career, there's a lot of phenomenal films. This is probably sat in his top 10. Country Mile, I've seen it once. I saw it 2 days ago. That's not even recency bias. The performance, the iconography of the film, what it's probably done legacy-wise, it is right up there with some of his other stuff. And I think it is just wonderful to see, if I'm being honest. I don't know if I'm talking too much about Michael Caine, but I'm struggling to think of other British actors who I think could have done this in 1992. Now, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, this was done tomorrow. This was done tomorrow. I'm sorry, but it'd be Benedict Cumberbatch, wouldn't it? But he'd be in on the joke. He'd be loving it. He's too young, but it would be something so blatantly British of the last 10, 20 years. A Tom Hiddleston type, maybe. I love the fact you've got middle-aged Michael Caine, and he's in on it, and he's got that commitment. And I don't want to jump the gun, but I think this is probably one of the most iconic adaptations of A Christmas Carol, not just for the fact it's got Muppets in it, but how good Michael Caine is at playing Scrooge.
Yeah, you've really like taken a lot of what I would have said just because it's true. What I love about this film so much is that Michael Caine plays it straight, and he acts like this is theatre, like that this could be being performed, you know, anywhere. This could be on Broadway. It might as well be. It's wonderful to see the characters shift as it's supposed to be. And I think there's a completely other version of this film where the character of Scrooge gives the nods, the winks to camera, breaks the fourth wall. But because we're in a Muppet film, that's what they're there to do. Gonzo and Rizzo are our narrators. Gonzo is being Charles Dickens in this film. And they're the ones who are providing any other context and talking to camera and talking to us, the audience. And, you know, having them juxtapose then, you know, very serious Michael Caine as Scrooge, it just creates such a unique viewing experience, which not a lot of films can get away with, but because it's the Muppets, you can really do that. So I really applaud, you know, the filmmakers and Michael Caine for being able to really pull that together and actually, stick to it, because I think it adds a layer to this film that it wouldn't have if it was, if it was done in any other way. In terms of Michael Caine in general, I think, this was probably one of, if not the first time I ever saw him in anything. I think that one of the only of the earliest memories I have of Michael Caine is in The Italian Job. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors out, which is, one of the most iconic film lines ever. That, and then probably Austin Powers in Goldmember is probably like my main Michael Caine references. So you have the Muppets, The Italian Job, and then Austin Powers. It's very different roles for Michael. Well, The Italian Job and Austin Powers is probably the closest together. But yeah, I think he's just so wonderful in this film, and thank God he's in it. Not that it would have fallen apart. I can believe that this would do well without him, but a lot of people think this film, they think Michael Caine. He is the core of this film, and what really makes it is, the evolution of Scrooge, which happens in the original story anyway. But the fact that he, recognizes what he's done, how he's behaved, what he's done in his life, what he's lost, and that he wants to correct it. And the fact that he ends the film being happy and joyous and surrounded by love, when the very beginning he was on his own, being terrible with everyone and anyone. And so it's just wonderful. And I think that's another reason to watch this film, to pick this film at Christmas, because it leaves you feeling such joy for him. And I think, one of the reasons why I might have felt a bit more emotional about the end of this film is because it is Michael Caine surrounded by all this love and joy, and to know that he's now, retired, it is emotional to think that this great actor who's done so much is not going really to be doing it anymore. So I think it's one of those where you get to the end of this film and you go, well done, Michael Caine. Like, it's an excellent performance, and it's one that I think he'll be remembered for forever.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That is something he will be remembered for, and it's really interesting talking about with it, because I know he is the lead in the film, but we're not talking about the excellent Muppets themselves or the puppeteers, the voice cast. I know there are obviously legends in there as well. Obviously, Frank Oz, of course, is back in it. And one thing I guess we do want to bring up as well, whilst we're not doing fully behind the scenes stuff, you mentioned it earlier, this is the first Muppets film without Jim Henson and Richard Hunt. And you've got to give credit to them as well for it's almost sounds terrible. Not for saying doing it so soon after Jim Henson passed away, but you could have easily understood why they might not have wanted to have done this. But the fact they did and dedicated the film to the pair of them, and the film is the way it is. I can't sit here and say that's how they'd want it to be remembered, but the film doesn't come across at any point ever like a corporate decision to make this into a new film. It is purely creative, and the creative is what we spoke about, Michael Caine leading a Muppets film. That's kind of what you want, and it is that sort of spirit of Christmas. And listen, doing a Christmas Carol, yes, it's easy to do that, but where I want to kind of go with this is we want to pick a few favorite scenes again. These aren't in-depth reviews; these are shorter videos. I know we've gone 40+ minutes already, but we have introed the whole series, which is a big chunk within itself. I'd love to know a couple of scenes if you want to talk about them. I'm just going to jump in, and it is me talking about Michael Caine again. I mean, I know he does appear in almost every scene. Two standout scenes for me. You mentioned the Scrooge song. An incredible introductory song and intro to a new character. If you're not familiar with Christmas Carol, you're not familiar with Scrooge, that song tells you everything you ever need to know about him in what, 2 minutes, two to 3 minutes. And the other bit, and it made me want to watch The Dark Knight Rises. I'm laughing, sorry. The gravestone stuff with Tiny Tim. The fact that he's conveying emotion, an actual incredible emotive performance in those final scenes, and he's doing it in a Muppets film, is testament to the direction, is testament to the performance, how seriously he's taken it. But that, and again, it's where the crux, it's the emotional crux of A Christmas Carol, is that, he is learning, he has to change his ways and whatnot. If your lead actor can't sell that, then the film fails, and it doesn't. And Michael Caine oversells it in a wrestling term, if you might. And I absolutely adore him for it. And I think that scene is what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of the film. Both his intro and how he, I guess, not outros, but changes his way. I don't think it's a bit of a cop-out. I don't know if I've nabbed any of yours, but favourite moments, anything I've missed? I know you're much more familiar with me than me with this, so I'm also very conscious of that too.
Yeah, I mean, the choices that I picked are mostly kind of similar to, well, it's the songs really. They're kind of the things that I think of first, and so I've got Bob Cratchit singing "One More Sleep Till Christmas." So Bob Cratchit is played by Kermit the Frog, um, and I think I've watched this film on Christmas Eve maybe just once or twice. But when you hear that song on Christmas Eve and you see kind of the everyone being happy to be having that day off, Scrooge has said, "Oh, you actually can have this day off." I love kind of that lead up, and it makes you, especially as it did as a kid, it made me so excited to think about Christmas Day and to hear that song. And I just love kind of the visuals where they're out in the snow at night and you see the shooting star at the end, which I think is one of the best visuals of this film. Another scene is again Bob Cratchit with Miss Piggy as Emily and the whole family together. When Scrooge is with the ghost of Christmas present, to just see that dynamic, and even though everyone's worried about Tiny Tim, there's still this. It's only a few minutes, but you just get this great sense of family and everyone coming together and being happy, making the best of what they've got. Which I think everyone at Christmas kind of can appreciate, that not everyone has the same sort of Christmas, but as long as you kind of like have the people that you love around you, you make the best out of it. So I love that in there as well. And I think the final scene, the final scenes with that final song, I just think evokes such joy. Like I said before, and I think it just ends the film in the best place it needs to be. And when it pans out and you just see, an 1800s London cityscape, I just think it's the perfect way to end. And yeah, I just think it's from Scrooge to that, it's just amazing. And I know it's not my favorite Christmas film, but it's got to be in like the top 5, maybe even 3, just because it is wonderful.
Okay, I like that, and that's fair as well. And sort of segueing into like a final thought as well for me. Again, it's not a review, so it's really weird. It's really weird taking things we do in reviews and trying to be like not critique it as such. But listen, I've watched this for the first time. It's a Christmas film I've not seen. It is a classic Christmas film, which kind of makes it worse because most you're expected in film. And I've never seen some videos before. You're expected to have seen X amount of films, and listen, it's an endless list of films that people haven't seen. I will just say that, and that's not an excuse. There are so many great films I've not seen. There's a whole wealth of going back 100 years worth of films I've not seen. But Christmas films are a gap of knowledge, which is no understatement, bar the ones I grew up with that I would watch on loop. So, firstly, thank you for recommending this to me because I did enjoy it. Again, I got to tick off a Michael Caine film, a Christmas film, a Muppets film. It's like 3 in 1.
Yeah.
And to kickstart this series, I think you absolutely nailed the choice because it's not too heavy with respect to Christmas. It's not too heavy with respect to performing. It's not alternate Christmas. Like, look, it's edgy because it's not actually a Christmas film. This is kind of what we want this series to be, where we're talking about films that maybe have had big impacts on us growing up or in our older years, films that people go back to each year and has that legacy. And for a film that's just gone past 30 years, which is quite scary when you really think about that now, the 90s as a decade is now 30 years ago. It's gonna. It only felt like yesterday was the 20th anniversary. The 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace was one of the most depressingly excitable days of my life. And it's only downhill from there, really. So, my final thoughts. Listen, I can't sit here and recommend it because you won't be watching at this point if you don't like the Muppets Christmas Carol. But I certainly see why so many people love it, and I'm glad I've had the chance to watch it and enjoyed it myself. And listen, I'm not lying. If I hate it, I'd have probably said it. It'd be the most awkward video ever done to kickstart a new series. So it was a risk within itself, but I think it's paid off for me at least. But Sam, your final thoughts? It's weird doing final thoughts on a non-review. Maybe this is something which is maybe someone comments saying how should we end the Christmas videos? I don't know. What do you do for Christmas? Do you do a countdown? Like, do you have a certain film you watch on Christmas Eve? Like, do people stagger their Christmas watches? I don't know. But what I would say, if I was a traditional Christmas planner, I'd imagine this goes on the list at some point. It's 87 minutes, by the way. Perfect runtime.
Perfect time. I mean, I kind of want to preface this by saying I'm pretty sure that most films that are going to be part of, Cinema Savvy's Christmas Classics are not going to be films that everyone on the panel is going to despise or really not like. I think this is the case of just celebrating, why these films are classics, and this is definitely one of them. I think we've both, from completely different perspectives on seeing this film, enjoy it. I know, George, you gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. I've given it 4.5 stars out of 5. There's not a lot that I would necessarily change of this film. I don't think there's anything that I would change. It's a time capsule in a number of ways. It's even just the idea of creating kind of a period film made in the 90s, but with Muppets, Michael Caine, small elements of CGI, just a little bit in there as and when necessary, but being produced on sets, on sound stages, and just having a fantastic time, managing to go through this classic story in a new and different way. And if this was the Muppet Christmas Carol in 2023, who knows what that would look like? But I'm very happy that we got this film during that time. It's one of the all-time great Christmas films. I can't recommend it enough. If you've not watched it this Christmas yet, definitely add it to your schedule to watch it. And yeah, make sure to watch it. If it outside of Christmas, I would watch this outside of Christmas purely for the fact that I think the performances are fantastic. We've talked a lot about Michael Caine, but even the Muppets, even the voice acting is marvelous. The puppeteering is marvelous. It's weird to get emotional about, and well, I was about to say about things that aren't alive, but these Muppets really do come to life, as they do in everything that they do, and I think that is down to the idea from Jim Henson and how that Muppet idea developed since the original TV show came out. So yeah, very thankful for this film, thankful for the memories that I had of it as a kid, and I'm glad that I still enjoy it to this day, because there's very occasionally some films that I watch as an adult and it does go down, and I know it's been the same with you, George, and it is a shame when that happens, because you kind of feels like you lose a bit of the magic of it, and I'm glad that we can keep the magic with this film.
Yes, absolutely. Very eloquently put too. And that's kind of going to do it for this first episode. So this is it. Again, we're going to be back on Sunday with another video. This is the first one we've done. And I will say again, people have any feedback, there's things you think we should be talking about with respect to Christmas. It's obviously a very different Christmas film. It's the Muppets, as we've said. But this is the first episode of the new series. So any feedback, it's always taken on board. And also, we want to know your thoughts. Do you like the Muppet Christmas Carol? What are your favourite Christmas films? What you're hoping for us to see? We've said a lot of times there's only 4 videos for this year. It sounds weird saying this year. It's a nice little series we can just bring up as and when. But not as and when in December. But Sunday, we are going to go for a heavyweight. Again, we've had a balance of how we've picked these for this first one. We know we've got less time. It's mid-December already. But we're going to do 4, and we've tried to split it up essentially with, I would say, 2 lighter-hearted films versus 2 different films. Not alternate Christmas, still very much Christmas films, but we're not doing like 4 family films in a row. We're not doing 4 adult films in a row. But we are doing on Sunday It's a Wonderful Life, which is regarded as the greatest Christmas film of all time. Like Muppet Christmas Carol, a film I've somehow not seen. And if people want to watch it, rewatch it before Sunday, it is streaming on Prime here in the UK. So we can at least push you towards that. Obviously, we mentioned the Muppets streaming on Disney Plus. So that's going to be our video on Sunday. We don't have times. We don't have the details yet. But every Wednesday and Sunday, you can expect one of these videos to come up. And obviously, then on Sunday's video, we'll announce what's next. And that's how we'll do it. We're not going to do a schedule and timetable. We're going to announce it film by film. So we do know what we're doing. And we hope you get around to watching that. But listen, as we round out, Sam, thank you not just for coming on the first episode, but for suggesting the series, developing it with me as well. It's something a bit different, and it's something exciting, if I'm being completely honest. And it breaks up watching films that we can have a bit of light-hearted humor injected here and there and different things. And it's also great to tick off some from genres I've not seen. So thank you so much. And to everybody at home as well, thank you for your support, for watching these videos, for allowing us to continue making stuff like this. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't, comment why. Again, it's a new series. We're not arrogantly assuming everything's going to be this astronomical bang, the greatest video thing put together ever. We're recording 2 days after we've come up with an idea. So if you think we've missed something massive about Christmas, do comment it. We will be looking at the comments and stuff like that. And as I said, support is always appreciated. Content creators are lying if they say they don't ever look at stuff like that. Unless you're Mr. Beast, you just don't need to at that point in life, I guess. But that's going to round out this. So once again, thank you for watching, and be sure to join us on the next one. Take care.